Greetings, everyone. I hope you're doing very well. I've waited about a week here to cover this, but I'm sure most of you have heard of this mass shooting in Greenwood Park, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis, and how this involved a concealed carrier holder. I've heard conflicting reports of whether he actually had a permit to conceal carry or not. It's irrelevant though in this state because in Indiana on July 1st, which is, I think the shooting happened on July 17th, or maybe the 12th. Let me double check. Um, Indiana has constitutional carry, probably the 25th or 26th state to implement that. And details have come out slowly, and the first details were misleading or not that accurate, and I'm sure there's still more to learn. There's video of this event that I haven't seen yet that hasn't been released as far as I know that should clear up a lot of the speculation about very, very small specifics. But what do we know? The police chief, everyone has acknowledged that the concealed carry holder, a guy named Elijah Dicken, is a hero. He was arrested. His gun was taken. When the mayor had his press conference, he made sure to first thank, the police, the fire department, the ATF of all things, the FBI, although what role they could have possibly had in saving lives is highly questionable. But then eventually, and with some emphasis in time, if not in place, Elijah Dicken was called a hero. At first, the police chief said that he stopped the shooter within 2 minutes. That's true, yes, within 2 minutes, but that's just a kind of misleading way to say in 15 seconds, because we now know that it was about 15 seconds from the time the shooter left the bathroom. So the shooter, there's a lot of questions about him, his motives, things like that. We do know how he had a gun. That's clear when he bought it. He had them for a while. It's not one of those cases where there's a mystery how this came about. As with the Uvalde shooting, kind of unclear how he got his guns, but this guy is pretty well known, pretty well established. He goes into the mall, he goes into the bathroom for over an hour, and then comes out shooting, shoots 3 people, and within 15 seconds has himself been shot 8 times from 40 yards away by Elijah Dicken. And he is killed. He tries to go back to the bathroom, but doesn't make it, and he's dead. Now, I want to cover this because very often in debates about gun control, people will say on the pro-gun side, well, if something bad happens, if the worst comes to pass, you're going to need somebody there with a gun to stop them. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting on the police. And even in the best case scenario, the police is going to be minutes away, which if you're talking about someone with a gun in a populated area, minutes away could mean dozens of dead people, right? Could mean many, many victims. And the retort is usually something along the lines of that never happens. I've been told this point blank many times, that just never, mass shootings are never, ever stopped by citizens with guns. And this is a case where that's clearly false. Now, you could argue, I mean, it's important to realize that it is in fact very rare, because mass shootings are very rare, at least the mass shootings as defined by the FBI. There is some semantic debate that can be had about what is and is not a mass shooting, and there's almost something that makes it syllogistically impossible. For instance, if someone comes out with an AR-15 into a theater and shoots one person, and then another person stands and shoots them. This happened at a church in Texas, I think, a couple years ago. Someone came in, pulls out a gun, a shotgun, I think, fires, and is immediately killed. And you could then say there wasn't a mass shooting there because the shooter only killed one person or 2 people, right? And so technically, if they don't kill 3 people, or if 3 people don't die, or 4 people don't die, including the shooter, right? So if the shooter kills 3 people, or the shooter kills 2 people and then has killed themselves, that's only 3 dead people. Technically, it's not a mass shooting by the standard the FBI use. Okay, now when gun control advocates tally mass shootings, they use a much lower bar. So they'll say if there are multiple quote unquote victims, and by victims they mean anybody in earshot, right? So they count things as mass shootings where no one's even shot, no one dies, and no one's injured. But if somebody fires a gun, if a firearm is discharged, say, they'll record cases like a firearm getting discharged in a parking lot, and there's people around that. Round goes into the ground. Maybe it's an accidental fire or a warning shot. Boom, mass shooting, right? That's not an event that shouldn't be recorded or tabulated in some sense. Wouldn't say that. It shouldn't be ignored, but it's not what most people consider mass shooting. But you have this catch-22 where if the shooter is stopped early enough, the incident itself becomes not a mass shooting. There's also the question of how do you know what was going to happen had it not been stopped, right? For all you know, the mass shooter was just going to quit. They were going to stop where they are. Maybe their gun was going to jam. Maybe they were going to have a heart attack. There are all these possible scenarios, some more plausible than others, that could have hypothetically ended the scenario. The police could have arrived and saved the day, for instance. And so who's to say? And so there is this rhetorical device that can be invoked with some more or less degree of plausibility in cases where this happens. But I think this is a very, very clear case, emphasized by the fact that concealed carry or constitutional carry is passed in Indiana. And I think it's just a wonderful juxtaposition, or I don't say wonderful in something like this, but a useful juxtaposition with the Uvalde shooting, because it illustrates that the police are not dependable. Now, we can argue about why that is. I would actually argue that on net, it's good that the police aren't so, roided out, gung-ho. There definitely are cops out there who are adrenaline junkies and who are, some of them probably could be called heroic, like they might be selflessly willing to risk their lives to kill. Or that are very headstrong and will rush into a situation, guns blazing, to get the shooter, whether it's because they want to save lives and are protective, or because they're just an adrenaline junkie who, a lot of cops will talk about they like a little bit of adrenaline. But I think, and those types of police officers, they're going to gravitate towards things like SWAT and maybe go to places where they're more likely to get their kicks. I would say that in 99% of the cases, that's not what you want in a police officer. That's a bad recipe, because the vast, 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 vast majority of interactions between civilians and police don't require that kind of attitude. That is a counterproductive attitude almost all the time. And that is how you get a lot of these defenseless shootings. The guy who shot, I forget the police officer's name and I forget the guy's name, but I remember in court, his rifle was engraved with the words, "You're fucked." And he just shot an unarmed guy on the floor. And that guy, he might have been a good guy to have there at Uvalde. I don't know. Some of these guys are also chicken hawks, where they act tough, but they won't actually be tough when, their life's on the line, which, again, I can kind of understand. I get it. It's your job. You don't want to die. Maybe you've got a family, maybe you don't. But either way, you probably don't want to die. And I can understand someone being a little nervous or unwilling to rush into a situation that could be really dangerous, right? Even if the shooter is some mentally unstable, untrained person, like in the case with Uvalde, not something that they would have necessarily known before. The Uvalde shooter, I just watched the video today, crashes his truck. He couldn't drive. Did he crash his truck intentionally, or is he just so off his rocker, right? When the video of him walking around, he doesn't have the poise or the directness of somebody who is super, super competent. Not that he needs to be in a gun-free school zone, like in a place where guns are banned. And if you bring a gun to a knife fight, you don't have to be the best shot in the world to win. You bring a gun to a disarmed fight of kids, yeah, you don't need. But on the other hand, police are always telling us we're here to protect you, to serve and protect. You gotta laud us, you gotta respect us, you gotta give us all of this credibility and all of this adoration and all these special perks and privileges. They get away with all. They are routinely flaunt the laws that they enforce on everybody else, just routinely. Like, it's absolutely routine. I could do a whole video, and I probably will soon, on why there really aren't any truly good cops, because even the ones who don't, they allow the ones who do. And like, it may seem trivial when police officers speed or park illegally, or as one told me on a date, he has tinted windows even though they're illegal in the state where he lives, and he gives tickets for people who have tinted windows. And when I pointed out the hypocrisy, was, I got a badge. Okay, now that attitude doesn't make him a murderer, but it puts him in a mindset where he's above the law. There's two sets of rules, and that's not a very good situation, right? These are supposed to be the arbiters, right? And they want to make themselves out to be the heroes. And there's, oh, here we are catching a pedophile, here we're doing this. None of them are high risk. And then when it comes time when they do need to risk their lives, where they are going to maybe get some bullets coming the other way, it turns out that the large majority of them are just complete cowards, or completely inept, right? It's possible there. The Uvalde situation, the story has changed now many, many times, from how long officers were there to why they didn't intercede. At first they were saying things like, we didn't have keys, we couldn't break in the door, as if that stopped any SWAT team ever. What do we have? Something like 1,000 no-knock raids a day. Those doors they never have keys to those doors, and they've got battering rams, and they've got their legs. They know how to break stuff in. And then, of course, it turns out that you can't lock the doors in a school from the inside. A detail I had completely forgotten, but which makes perfect sense and was alluded to. And then, we thought it was a hostage situation. They didn't claim that they lacked training because they had received hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of training just months ago. They've been certified, right? Which begs the question, is there going to be a refund on all that money? I mean, the taxpayers flipped the bill, hundreds of thousands of dollars for school shooting training. I believe they even trained at Uvalde. I could be wrong about that, but they definitely got the training, and they took the courses. They spent the money. They took they did these posed pictures, these like safari pictures, showing what alpha mensches they are. And then 2 months later, when it actually happens, the only thing they're effective at doing is providing a security cordon around the school and protecting the shooter from the enraged parents on the outsides, who would have gotten the job done with their bare hands if they had been allowed, right? They would have mobbed the place, and that's assuming none of them had guns, which in Texas is not a fair assumption, right? So it's illustrative because for whatever reason, right, and you can say there's incentive reasons, there's knowledge problem, there's just practical problems with the police. They're just not there. Or we can be nice about this. You don't have to take the stand I do, that cops are essentially an inherently corrupt organization, and that even if there are, and I'm sure that there are people in there who have good intentions, or who may even have the appropriate skills, there are cops who are good shooters. There are cops who are physically fit and know jiu-jitsu and blah, blah, blah. But they're in a really, really bad system. But just practically speaking, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there fast enough. There's no way. Like, by the time they were getting the 911 calls in Greenwood, the shooter was already dead. Like, before the calls had, I'm sure the calls were starting to be made, but before it had been articulated over the phone what was happening to the dispatch people, and before dispatches were given to the police, the shooter was dead. He'd been shot 8 times from 40 yards, which, by the way, is pretty good. I don't know how many of you have been shooting. I'm not like a super proficient shooter, but I have shot guns and handguns. Because the barrel length is so short, very slight differences can put you off quite a bit. So like, even at 10 yards, hitting a person-sized target is like not the easiest thing. It's not like there's a gradation here and difficulty here. Obviously there's people who train with this and people can hit targets at over 100 yards with handguns, but it's not easy. It's much easier with rifles. You give an untrained person a rifle and say, hey, hit this target at 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards. They're probably going to hit the target. But if you have a target at 10 yards and someone's never fired a handgun before, there's a very good chance they'll miss. So 40 yards, very likely at a funny angle. The shooter was a smaller guy. Some of the commentators I've watched said he almost certainly was bladed, which means he wasn't probably not facing Elijah Dickens straight on. He was probably at some kind of angle which would reduce his profile to one degree or another. And plus, there's just been a shooting. There's people shot, people screaming, people running around. It's absolutely phenomenal shooting. And another point here, before I forget it, it's a tangent, but it's a valid one. And Elijah Dickens was never in the military and was never in the police. He has no official training as far as that goes. Now, he obviously has trained. It's said that his grandfather taught him. I don't know what his grandfather taught him. I don't know how much he practiced, but it looks like he's quite proficient. So for all of those who say, well, you got to be, and it's only for military and police, and it's too powerful to be put in the hands of regular people. No. As the saying goes, when seconds count, the police are minutes away, or in the case of Uvalde, over an hour away. So, again, this isn't to say that having a gun is a cure-all. It's now coming out that the very first person shot at the mall, I think his name was Gomez. Let me double check this. Blah, blah, blah. Victor Gomez, 30, was entering the bathroom right as the shooter was coming out, according to police. Gomez was the first victim shot and killed despite being armed with a handgun. Right, so like, guns are not magic. There's plenty of situations where a gun is going to be of little use. Like I think about if they had constitutional carry in Japan and there's a tsunami, gun's not going to do you any good at all, right? Some guy decides to be a sniper. You get a situation like the totally unexplained, mysterious, and down the memory hole biggest mass shooting in U.S. history, the Las Vegas shooting, where a guy is up, high up in a skyscraper in a hotel, shooting down at a massive crowd. If someone in that crowd happened to have a handgun, I guess they could return fire, but at that range, under those conditions, it would be just completely the chances that they would hit would be astronomically small. In this case, we have if you're concealed carrying and a guy just walks out and shoots you before you have a chance to react, I don't see how his gun made things worse. It was concealed, so the shooter had no idea that there was another firearm there available to him, nor would it apparently have mattered. He was armed with a rifle, and this is another thing people say is like, well, if they've got a rifle, what good is it for you to have a handgun? Well, you can have better aim and take them by surprise. This by surprise is the big thing. He had surprise on Victor Gomez because there hadn't been a shooting at that point. As soon as he pulls the trigger, the surprise is gone. And the clock is ticking before he starts getting rounds coming into him. 10 rounds were fired at him, 8 went into him. Nobody else was harmed by crossfire, which is another big problem with a lot of these police. The police go in when they finally do, right? And Uvalde, again, you can I'll put the link. You can watch the entire video. It's thankfully not that graphic, but it's chilling nonetheless, because it gives you a sense of the lackadaisical approach and the absolute chicken hawkery, the cowardice of these cops, because they're there. Multiple cops are there, first with handguns, but very quickly with rifles, body armor, bullet shields, and you're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of officers, and yet they don't do anything. And was it cowardice? Was it a misunderstanding or a systemic, mistake? It doesn't really matter to everyone who got killed. And, their incentive structures are just really bad. What's the worst that's going to happen to a police officer in this situation? It's the absolute worst. They maybe get fired after a long legal battle, which they'll likely win. as I learned from the disgusting individual David Hogg, the police officer at Parkland Elementary School was fired and then subsequently sued and was given his job back. And he argued in court that it wasn't part of his job to stop school shootings, even though why else would you have an officer at school? I guess other than to terrorize students and threaten them with life in prison or becoming a sex offender because they traded nudes with their girlfriend, which is, it seems to be what they're mostly there for. And he argued that successfully and was given his job back. But I would say that who wants to risk their life if the only negative consequence is you might lose your job and then have to go to court to get your job back, or be put on administrative leave? These guys control the narrative, right? So all the misstatements that came out in Uvalde, I'll give them the benefit. I mean, should we call them lies, or should we say that they just got things wrong to make it look better for them, right? But they can sculpt the narrative. One thing that's consistent between the two cases is that Elijah Dicken hasn't spoken at all personally. His lawyer has spoken very, very briefly, but we're getting the story from the police, and they could have told the story any way that they wanted. Let's say that they ended up coming to the scene, happened just the way that it did, and the police ended up killing Elijah Dicken. I could fully imagine that rather than come out and say there was a shooter, an armed citizen stopped the shooter and killed them, they're a hero, but then we killed him, I would imagine that they would say, maybe that's not what happened. Maybe it would be better if we say there were two mass shooters and we killed them both. And that would be the story, and that would be the headline, and that would be the headline a day later and 2 days later, and then there'd be an accusation from someone in Dicken's family, and then, in a month the coroner's report will come out, and we find out, then there'll be a court battle, and then we find out a year later that, no, actually, the police shot the actual hero and killed the hero unjustifiably. And there'll be all this stuff about how there's video, but it's been lost because all the body cam footage just broke, and the mall has security footage, but all their security footage broke, even though a reporter saw it that day and saw what happened, but then the police lost it in the evidence locker and blah blah blah. And they'll control the narrative. And on this topic, the media gives them a complete all the benefit of the doubt. Now, media doesn't give them police the benefit of the doubt on everything, right? So if Elijah Dicken was black, then the presumption would be something horrible happened, right? That the police must have done something wrong, and what they did wrong must have been racism, right? So Jacob Blake, that case, they get the benefit of the doubt, right? But Elijah Dicken is white, so that wouldn't have happened, and fortunately for him, the police didn't kill him. There are cases of that happening. I forget which one. There was one where he's a libertarian who stopped a mass shooting who was then killed. I forget his name. Not Duncan Lemp. But that's a different case. But I should look that up probably. But I'm not going to find it right now. But so they can paper over their mistakes. And their crimes in many cases. And then even when they do slowly come out, again, we're talking about them maybe losing a job. I saw these Uvalde parents going to the school board, and they're just demanding that the safety officer at the school be fired. It's like, do you have one job? This is the whole point, is to do safety. It turns out the safety at Uvalde is the worst safety of any school in the country. Although I think it would be true to also say that it was unlucky in the sense that its safety procedures were tested. I think if you tested other schools, you would find most of them were similarly unsafe, right? And the reason that they're similarly unsafe is, aside from the institutional incompetence of the police and the public schools, but there's also this general point that they're gun-free zones. This is something that gun rights people have been talking about for many, many years, and I don't ever hear really good retorts to this. It seems completely logical if you have a pathology where you want to kill as many people as possible, and it seems like this is rare, but it does happen to some people. And if you want to do that, and this seems to happen in other countries as well, so you will get people who will do this. Australia has a long history of mass arsons. People are like, okay, I want to kill a whole bunch of people, and they'll credit themselves and say we made guns very hard to come by here, so our mass killers just burn people to death, as if that's a better way to go. As somebody who has been really badly burned, I don't know if I would prefer that to just being shot, to be honest. But it's probably not ethically that different. So, but if you want to kill as many people as possible, you don't go to a gun range. You don't go to a gun show. You don't go and try and shoot up a police station, right? That's a political statement that could happen. But if you're trying to go for mass casualties, what do? You want to go to a place where your victims can't fight back. And that's wonderful. It's wonderful for you then if the government has created gun-free zones and said this is a place where you can't have guns. This seems to have been, I mean, these people can be crazy, but they're not stupid, right? They still know how to drive and pull a trigger, right? They can walk around and they can think. You want to kill as many people as possible, you go to a place where their guns are banned. This seems to have been clearly the case with the Denver shooter, the so-called Joker shooter. He dressed up like Batman and killed a whole bunch of people when I think it was The Dark Knight came out. And he apparently, in Colorado, they have concealed carry. They don't have constitutional carry yet. But this shooting in Indiana is probably going to help get constitutional carry passed in a couple more states in the coming years. But schools were or individual buildings could tell you whether you could conceal carry or not. A business had the right to tell you, which, by the way, I'm a proprietarian, right? I'm a libertarian, and I think if a business wants to say, we don't want you in here if you have a gun, I think that might be stupid in a lot of cases, but, it's their right to do. And the shooter there had many theaters around him that did not ban concealed carry. And he shows up to the one that was farther away. He drove past a whole bunch of other ones. He showed up to the one that had a clearly marked sign saying guns were not allowed. That's the one that he shot up. I wonder why, right? And, this guy, apparently this mall banned guns. So there's been some talk. So, the View, the left is kind of their kind of strand that they're trying to go on here is guns weren't allowed in this mall. So Indiana had shall issue concealed carry. So if you wanted to get a permit, they had to give it to you if you qualified, and it was not a very difficult one to get. It wasn't like California or some of these other states that just launch as many hurdles as possible. I just watched a video of a guy in California who spent 2 years trying to get a concealed carry license in Torrance. You can look up Torrance, California, CCW, and he just demonstrates that they just never would give it to him. Oh, we're not ready. It takes there's 100 people, and it turned out the only people they would give it to. They did give them to some people. They gave them to the mayor, to the mayor's friends, to cops, to firemen, to people who had donated. But anyone else, just we're too busy. We can't. We're too busy. We can't. No, we're not. We can't do it now. We're swamped. Blah blah blah. We don't have enough resources. Blah blah blah. And they just never give it to you. When this recent Supreme Court case passed, I saw an interview with the San Francisco sheriff, whatever county that is there, and he said they have issued no concealed carry permits, zero in a county with 1 million people or more, right? So like they're technically legal, but de facto completely not legal. Indiana wasn't like that. It was easy to get a concealed carry permit, and the last that I had read, and this may be revised, so was that Elijah Dicking did get a concealed carry permit in August of 2021, as soon as he turned 21, which is I guess how old you had to be to get it. But then on July 1st, Indiana became a constitutional carry state, which means you don't need a permit. And apparently he didn't have his permit on him. It doesn't matter. But they'll have this thin reed of the mall did not allow you to have guns. Well, that's not breaking the law. That means that you're violating a policy there. And technically, if they had caught him and said, you need to leave, then he would have been guilty of trespass. I'd love to see them do that now. So this is so interesting because it illustrates all the practical reasons, right? And let's say Elijah Dicken hadn't been a great shot. Let's say that he shot like I would have, which would have, if I had fired 10 rounds, I might have hit him once and missed and maybe just injured him. But that still would have been a better situation. The guy immediately tried to run back into the bathroom. Boom. You just bought time. Now he's hiding in the bathroom. Does he know if your gun's empty? Is he going to come out? Does he know if you're going to be hiding? Like, maybe he's injured now. He's bleeding he's got a wound. This is obviously better in every way. You bought time for people to flee. You've bought time for the police to come, and God knows they're going to need at least potentially an hour or more. Or in this case, you're dead. He doesn't even make it back to the bathroom. He's hit 8 times. He's dead. He wasn't wearing body armor. Dicken wasn't either. Dicken was wearing shorts and a T-shirt. It's a hot day. As some of the other people I've listened to said, it was very hot that day. For him to continue to conceal carry, he must have been quite serious about it. Since it's one of those things. I mean, look, the odds of this happening are very, very small. So I'm in a constitutional carry state. I don't carry a concealed weapon hardly ever because it's just heavy and I don't feel like I need it, right? Those situations just arise so infrequently that it's unnecessary, right? In my view. And 9,999 times out of 10,000, it would have been unnecessary for Elijah Dicken too, but he was ready when it was and he saved lives. But here's the other thing I want to talk about is juxtapose his behavior post and how he was treated to say, the Parkland, the Fab Four, David Hoggs. Elijah Dicken has not spoken to anyone personally. He said nothing. The lawyer who spoke for him, like a week later, said that he's processing what happened, and that in respect for the victims, he doesn't want to speak. Compare that with David Hogg. David Hogg didn't save anybody. David Hogg didn't stop a shooter. Police didn't stop a shooter there either. The shooter in Parkland finished what he was doing. He left, and the police arrested him at Subway later. Right? Like, they didn't have to kill him. By the way, he's just now, I think that his trials ended. He pled guilty, and they're deciding whether they're going to kill him or not, whether he should be subjected to the death penalty. But what does David Hogg do? And I've seen this. I looked. Unfortunately, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of videos of David Hogg at this point. But he live streamed in Parkland. He saw no one get killed. He did not even hear the gunshots. He doesn't know anyone who was killed. In fact, nobody who saw the actual shooting became the famous faces, the Gomez's and the Kyles, or the David Hoggs. But he immediately starts live streaming and video recording kids that he's on lockdown with and asking them to blame the NRA. So where is his, I'm grieving for the loss, I want to show respect, I want to process? No. He's jumping out in front and he's riding a wave. And he rode it all the way to fame and influence. He got a Harvard education out of it. I wonder if Harvard's going to offer Elijah Dicken, do you want to come here and study? You're a hero. David Hogg did fuck all. David Hogg is completely shameless. And I don't know how much of it was specific to, he obviously tried to be in media before. He'd done junior CNN shit before that. He obviously wanted to be famous. And, if something else had happened, if there'd been a flood or something, I could just imagine him just jumping in front of every camera he possibly could and giving that ornery Twinkie look that he had back then. But it just so happened that it was guns. Or maybe he really, before that, did favor gun control. Probably not 100% sure either way. But regardless, he used it to advance his life. And he didn't give two shits about letting the victims' families process or any of that. He became famous, and they're nobodies, right? They're just footnotes in history, and he's, He's given a blue check mark. And I was thinking about this. A couple weeks after Parkland, CNN organizes a town hall where they have the head of the NRA and Marco Rubio. And this is the only thing Marco Rubio has ever done that I will respect him for. And he put him on stage with Hogg and Gomez and the Kyle guy who told Rubio, I can't. It's hard for me to look at you because every time I look at you, I imagine AR-15 pointed at my face. So CNN took these kids who did nothing. They're not heroes. They're not even. I mean, they're victims in the sense that they were in the same school district. They weren't even in the same buildings. I think in the case of all four of them, certainly in the case with Hogg, they didn't know anyone who was killed. Right? I mean, it's like my brother had a friend who died of cancer. So I am personally victimized because my brother's friend died of cancer. Come on. Like, but they were given an hour in that one case, in that one example, an hour of prime time where they debate a senator. They get to dunk on him constantly because they're just quote unquote victims and kids, right? They're all minors. They're all like 17 at the time. And just spew their whatever their inane, childish, emotive views were, completely ignorant views. And because of they were lucky on so many levels that they were had this event happen, but the event didn't actually personally harm them in any measurable way, right? And it just gave them this huge platform. I wonder if CNN is going to call up Elijah Dicken and say, Elijah, we would love to do a town hall with you, and we're going to put Dianne Feinstein or Chuck Schumer or some other high-profile senator, probably not the Indiana senators, because the Indiana senators are probably not big gun control maniacs, but we're going to find the most gun control people in Congress. We're going to bring them to Glenwood. We're going to put them up there. We're going to bring the police chief from Uvalde. He's going to come too. And we're going to give you a platform to talk about what you think about the Second Amendment and concealed carry and gun rights. And you can ask them any questions you want. That's never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Now, part of the reason that's not going to happen is Elijah Dicken apparently doesn't want that. Elijah Dicken doesn't want to talk to anyone because it seems like he's got a bit of a conscience. One of the things that they'll allege is like these people who conceal carry, they're just Rambos and they want to they have these fantasies that they're going to save the day and be the hero. That probably happens. There probably are people who think that way. But if that was his true, well, first of all, he earned the right to be a hero in this case. He fucking saved lives. He put himself at risk. He could have run away. He didn't. And he saved a bunch of lives, according to the police anyway. And if their telling of the story is even remotely accurate, and it's being confirmed by him as well, so there doesn't seem to be much dispute there on any of those pertinent details, then yeah, you have the right to call yourself a hero. But even if that's not the point, he's not out there being Mr. Braggadocio. He's not out there like, give me the credit, give me, I'm the man, like these fucking Parkland parasites did, right? They're like a fungus that like if something dies and then they live off of its decomposing body. Like Parkland happens, there's a bunch of victims, and David Hogg and Gomez and Kyle, they just go and they like live off of it. And they fucking vampirize the blood and blossom into these horrible like influencers. Elijah Dicken is apparently not doing that. Now, maybe this will change. In 6 months or a year, he comes out and starts selling NFTs and pulling a Kyle Rittenhouse on us, which, mad respect to Kyle, but, if you followed him, you see, yeah, he's trying to make go out of this. Of course, Kyle's life has been completely ruined, so he's got to make a living somehow. But Elijah's not doing that. So it doesn't seem like he wants the spotlight. But let's say that he did. Let's say that he came out and goes, he starts going on the news programs. He goes on Tucker Carlson. He goes on Fox. Is CNN going to invite him on? And if they do, are they going to give him a segment? Or are they going to give him an hour? Are they going to bring in Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer or Carolyn McCarthy or any of these other anti-gun grabbing, Second Amendment hating, I'd confiscate them all liberals? Nope. That's never going to happen. Never, ever. They're never going to give him that platform. They're completely and totally biased against this. And one book I'd recommend if you guys are kind of interested in going to like the empiricism of that, John Lott did a great book called Straight Shooting years ago. It's a very small book. And one of the main topics of the book is documenting media bias because, yes, mass shootings are rare, and citizens stopping mass shootings is even more rare because it's just a rare event, and mass shootings tend to happen in places where people aren't allowed to have guns. That's the whole point. They're deliberately targeted for that reason. And so it doesn't happen that often, but this is not the only case. And he points out that very often when it happens, the media do not report on that element. And so let me actually have a bookmark on this page because it's so relevant here. So this is a less well-known shooting here at the Appalachian School of Law. I think, when was this? It was a while ago. This is an older book too. A lot of good data. Yeah, so this was in 2002. In January 2002, a shooting left 3 dead in Appalachian Law School in Virginia. The event made international headlines and produced more calls for gun control. Yet one critical fact was missing from virtually all the news coverage. The attack was stopped by 2 students who had guns in their cars. The fast responses of Michael Gross and Tracy Bridges undoubtedly saved many lives. Michael was outside the law school returning from lunch when Peter Odighizuwa, Odighizuwa, probably shouldn't say his name because he's a mass shooter, but started shooting. Tracy was in her classroom waiting for class to start. When the shots rang out, chaos erupted. Mikkel and Tracy were prepared to do something more constructive. Both immediately ran to their cars and got their guns, then approached the shooter from different sides, thus confronted the attacker, threw down his gun. Isn't it remarkable that of the 208 news stories from the Nexus Lexus search in the week after the event, just 4 mentioned that the students who stopped the shooter had a gun? So out of 208 stories in the next week, only 4 mentioned that the event was started by 2 students with guns. A typical description of the event in the Washington Post: 3 students pounced on the gunman and held him until help arrived. Just completely omitting that they used guns. New York's Newsday noted only that the attacker was, quote, restrained by students. Many students mentioned the law enforcement or military backgrounds of these students' heroes, but virtually all the media, in discussing how the killer was stopped, said things such as, students tackled the man while he was still armed. Students tackled the gunman. The attacker dropped his gun after being confronted by students, who then tackled him to the ground. Or students ended the rampage by confronting and then tackling the gunman, who dropped his weapon. In all, 72 stories described how the attacker was stopped without mentioning that the heroes had guns, yet 68 stories provided precise details on the gun used by the attacker. The New York Times made sure to point out a .38 semi-automatic handgun. The Los Angeles Times noted it was a .38 caliber semi-automatic pistol. A week and a half after the assault, I appeared on the radio program in Los Angeles along with Tracy Bridges, one of the Appalachian Law student heroes. Tracy related how shocked he had been by the news coverage. Though he had carefully described to over 50 reporters what had happened, explaining how he had to point the gun at the attacker and yell at him to drop his gun, the media had consistently reported that the incident had been ended by students, quote, tackling the killer. When I relayed what the Washington Post had reported, Tracy quickly mentioned that he had spent a considerable amount of time talking face-to-face with reporter Maria Glod of the Post. He seemed stunned that this conversation had not resulted in more accurate rendition of what had occurred. After finishing the radio show, I telephoned the Washington Post and Miss Glond confirmed that she had talked to both Tracy Bridges and Mikael Gross, and that both had told her the same story. She said that describing the students as pouncing and failing to mention their guns was not intentional. Yes, they just all admitted this. The way things came out was simply due to space constraints. But you could mention, the type of gun that the shooter had. Later spoke with Mike Gettler, the ombudsman of the Post. Gettler was quoted in Kansas City Star as saying the reporters simply did not know that the bystanders had gotten their guns. After I informed him that Glod had been told by the students about using their guns, that excluded the information. Gettler said that she should have included it. However, Gettler said there's nothing to do, blah, blah, blah. One other one. The Kansas City Star printed a particularly telling interview with Jack Stokes, media relations manager at the Associated Press, who dismissed accusations that news groups deliberately downplayed the role of guns may have played in stopping the shooting. But Stokes did acknowledge being, quote, shocked upon learning that students carrying guns had helped subdue the gunman. I thought, my God, they're just putting into jeopardy even more people by bringing these guns. Okay, so that's one illustrative case, but he goes through many, 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 many other cases where this is consistently underreported, right? And in that case, that's not even a mass shooting, right? It doesn't make the news cycle for that long. We're not going to hear about it. We're not going to hear about the Greenwood shooting probably very much anymore. They're not going to be interviewing Elijah Dicken, even if he wanted it, which apparently he doesn't. And same thing. So the media is going to elevate if you come out and say, wow, we need gun control, this is bad, Biden's not doing enough, the NRA has blood on its hands, blah, 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 boom. All the coverage you want, blue check mark on Twitter, everything, you get hundreds of thousands of followers like that instant. They just send all of the gun control bots to join you and act as a microphone. And then you actually are a hero. You actually legitimately save the fucking day. And they just want to omit you as much as possible. Now, in this case, it was so in your face that it got some coverage, but how long are they going to talk about it? And how many, the other one that came to mind, and I don't have a comprehensive list of these in my mind, but there was Stephen Williford. Stephen Williford was from the, if you look up the Sutherland Springs church shooting, which was in November 2017. Read this from the Wikipedia page. So a guy starts shooting up a Baptist church. And when he leaves, he's confronted and traded fire with Stephen Williford, a local resident and former firearms instructor who was armed with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. Williford had taken cover behind a truck across the street from the church and shot Kelly twice, once in the leg and once in the upper left torso under his tactical gear. Kelly, who had dropped his rifle during the initial firefight with Williford, so wounded and largely disarmed, fired back with a handgun before fleeing in his Ford Explorer. Williford fired one more round as Kelly sped north on FM 539. Williford then noticed the pickup truck pulled into an intersection of 4th Street, blah, blah, blah. Williford approached and pursued the shooter for minutes, blah, blah, blah. And the guy died. The guy died in the car and crashed. Okay, so this guy's in the same... The Stephen Williford, he's a hero. Ever heard of him? How many Twitter followers does he have? Does he even have Twitter? Let's check. Let's check. Stephen Williford. Probably not. Is he getting, what's your opinion? Whenever they have a school shooting, do they call this guy up and be like, hey, we want you to talk for 5 minutes? No, but they'll do that for David Hogg. Right? He'll get on there. He'll be happy to. Right? How is that not bias? How is somebody who sat in their classroom and did nothing have greater, right, provenance, have greater expertise on... Oh, he does. Good guy with a gun. Stephen Williford, a good guy with a gun. All right, that's apparently him. Okay, if this is him, how many followers do you think he has? 590. What 590. How many does David Hogg have? Here is David Hogg at the White House. 1.2 million. Right? What did David Hogg do to earn that relative to Stephen Willeford? Or Elijah Dicken? You blame the NRA, do nothing, cower. I'm not going to blame him for cowering. I'm not going to blame him for doing nothing. You're not obligated to do anything, and, he wasn't allowed to. Not that he would have owned a gun if he could, but he wouldn't have been allowed to, right? So in that sense, to the extent that he experienced some emotional trauma, yeah, he's a little bit of a victim here. That gives him any special wisdom. Dicken and Willeford were much, much more victims. We don't know if the shooter returned fire at Dicken. We know that the shooter returned fire at Willeford. He was fired at. They both were much closer to the actual shootings. They actually saw people get killed. They actually saw people get murdered and shot, and were in danger of being shot themselves. And Willeford, at the very least, was shot at. We don't know if Dicken was shot at too. Might have been. If that video is ever allowed to come out. So they're victims in that sense. But then they rose above being a victim and, acted heroically. And they saved the police a lot of time, right? They saved a lot of lives. So I don't know. I feel like that kind of gives them more provenance, more value, right? They've done more than David Hogg ever will or ever could. And what's worse is he would actively, David Hogg is unequivocally against constitutional carry, unequivocally against concealed carry. You went into a mall that says you can't have a gun, you're a bad person. Colin Noir pointed this out too, is they'll say, you're not responsible enough, you don't have the training because you're not in the Army, whatever, because people in the Army train with handguns that often. But then if you do go to the gun range a lot and practice a lot, they'll be like, why are you a gun nut? Why are you trying to be Rambo? You shouldn't do that. That's creepy, blah, blah, blah. So you can't please them. No matter what, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't with these people. Just guns are bad. And when you use guns for something good, then it's like, well, that's bad too. The whole thing is bad. And they're almost always hypocrites. If they're politicians, they're getting defended, through their power and their position and their wealth. Same with celebrities who talk this way. So, is there anything else? Yeah. But I'm not glad this happened, but this is a clear, look at this case. And what you're basically saying is we don't want that to ever be allowed. We don't want there to be concealed carry. We don't want people to own handguns. All this talk about this gun control, it's never gonna stop with AR-15s. That's never gonna be enough because they just don't account for any deaths. Even if you were to just able to cancel all AR-15 deaths, just boom, they're all gone. They never happened again. It wouldn't lower the homicide rate by even 1%. So, all right. Well, hopefully more coming soon. Let me know what you guys think, and I don't know, hit the range maybe if you live in America.